Hello, everybody. Hello again to anybody who saw me earlier. Thank you for coming back. If you didn't see me earlier, good. This is the first time you're going to see. This one, so I was somebody had to drop out last minute, so I got an email this week saying, "Can you just do another talk?" And this is just another one I've got that I've just been updating constantly as the story's changed. And it used to be quite a long story, and every time I tell it, it gets shorter and shorter. So I have no idea today how long we're going to take. So I've been asked to slow down, so I'm going to try and slow down. But as you can tell, I kind of get excited when I do these things. So I tell you what, let's have it. If I'm talking too quickly, kind of just do this, right? Just let me know, and then I can slow down again, okay? So, this talk is based on a real-life experience I had when I was given an opportunity to do an Agile transformation. And the reason it's called Water-Scrum-Fall, Unicorns and Fantasy was basically I was talking to a friend of mine about this talk, and it's a couple of years old now, and I said, well, what am I going to call this story I've got? And we were being very negative at the time, and he said, well, it's all unicorns and fantasy, meaning Agile doesn't really exist. Getting to that kind of Agile, I was going to say panacea, this kind of golden Agile thing, whatever it is, right, doesn't really exist, which I know to be untrue because I've worked in really good Agile companies. So that's where this kind of comes from. As it's progressed, it's got more pink, okay? And as it's progressed, we've got better unicorns. It used to have really bad unicorns, so it's got better unicorns on it. You're sorry? Too big, okay. It used to have rainbows and all sorts of stuff. Oh, too pink, I think you said. So anyway, we've got to do you've seen this, right? I don't need to stay on this one for too long. For those who haven't seen this one, this is just a little bit about me. I've been doing software development for about 15 years, and actually it was quite interesting. Somebody said, how long have you been doing kind of coaching Agile leadership stuff? And I actually, it made me think, it's probably about 8 years I've actually been doing leadership within Agile spaces. Prior to that, I was a developer, a tester, and then I've kind of progressed. I've done management, and I've done release management and Scrum Mastery, development management. So I've kind of covered a wide spectrum of things through my history, my career, and kind of it's all kind of culminated in kind of where I am today, and I've always worked in a very agile way. And it's been really interesting, the kind of the journey I've gone on, going through all the organizations I've gone in and seeing the different levels of agile implementation, what different people think agile is and what different people call agile, and the confusion between agile and scrum. People think agile is scrum and all these kind of things. And so this story starts off at a place where I had a true belief that given a team of Scrum Masters, I could save the world, right? And like all good stories do, they start in the pub, okay? So I was in the pub in the UK with the chief, I think he was the chief information officer for this organization. And I was relatively new to the company. And we got talking, and it was quite obvious he didn't know who I was, had no idea what Agile was, didn't know what Scrum was. That was the kind of vibe. It's not that he didn't like me. I think we were on a kind of completely different level. And he said, Andy, he said, what is the one thing? If I could grant you a wish, what's the one thing? And I said, I would love a team of Scrum Masters within your organization to go and coach, to go and do the training, to go and save your organization from all the really silly stuff I see happening at the moment within your organization. And I don't I don't know how many drinks I'd had at this point or what actually he ended up saying past that point, but I got my point across. So, the CTO, CIO of this organization had me in his mind, as far as I was concerned, of somebody who had ambition and wanted to drive an agile transformation. Okay? Now, what follows, what you're going to see through this, is actually what I learned along the way, okay? And I got my wish. I got my team, okay? I got my team of Scrum Masters, and I hired. We'll come on to that in a bit. But this is all about my shot at leading an Agile transformation, not just being part of it, okay? So we've got to talk about enterprise organizations, okay? For those who may have seen my thing earlier, I like to have a lot of visual humour. Goes back to the stuff Cliff was talking about this morning, which is all around visualization, right? Having some cognitive connection. So this is just a little joke. I'm a Star Trek fan. I've never quite got on with Star Wars. It's all that lightsaber stuff. I've just never gone on. But we've got to talk about enterprise organizations, these big organizations, right? And the organisation I was working with was an enterprise organisation in a really strange way. So it was actually quite a small company that worked for lots and lots of multinational other companies, and they provided almost a product service. It was a very, very strange company to work for. Because like most companies, like most enterprise organisations, like, anybody who's doing stuff, because you sell stuff, right? And the whole purpose is we've got a product or a process or a service to sell, right? And the customer wants to buy it. And we had sales guys, right? We had sales guys who went out and said, hey, we've got this great thing. And the customer went, brilliant, we'll have everything of whatever that is, right? And there was a huge disconnect between what the sales guys thought we had, and what we actually had. And so the customer goes away going, brilliant, please excuse the hand-drawn. These are the slides I haven't actually managed to do anything funky with yet. But the customer goes away and says, brilliant, I've met this great sales guy. He's promised me, do you know the term moon on a stick? Does that kind of make sense to you? It's like, we promise you everything, the moon on a stick. But we're going to get everything we want. And it's this point that the whole thing just collapses around you. Because the moment the customer is expecting everything about everything they've been promised, you're suddenly into a kind of a little bit of a world of pain. Okay? Because we know, anybody who's down in the software development layer, even project management layer, and you might have aware enough people, you might be lucky enough to have aware enough people at a program layer that know it's a little bit more than just what. Okay, so the customer say, can I have this? Yes, you can have everything. They go, brilliant, I'm getting all of my what. What have I asked for? Okay, because we know it all comes packaged with things like when, how and why. How are we going to deliver this stuff? And the vision, what are we delivering? And the who are we delivering this stuff for? Okay. But when the sales guy goes in, he doesn't think about this. He's got a target. He's got something, he's got a tick sheet of customers he needs to go and make sales against. Money, it's like, that's my job. I got to make ticks on this list, right? And the biggest question that comes back down the line is when. For those who went into the no estimates, I'm really gutted I missed it. But when is just like the leading question of doom for anybody, because the moment you say then, the moment you say, oh, next week, that's it, you're done, right? You have a commitment in most people's eyes that you will deliver, okay? What I'd like to coach you to do, okay, I'd like you to get you to think about when you come out of this, is getting out of the mindset of thinking what and when, okay, and start thinking about how much. Okay, an outcome, I think, is another way of putting it. Okay, so how much is the customer expecting and when? Because that then defines the value. Okay, that defines the value to the customer. If you can engage them at that level and say, yeah, sure, you'd like everything, but how much of that actually do you need at a particular time? Okay, it's just a different mindset. This is all Agile is. It's just thinking about problems differently. Then you can move into the what, because once you've kind of agreed this how much, and it might be this kind of cognitive outcome, you can then start to move into, okay, what are we delivering? Working with them, collaboration, okay? Because we'd like to get into this mode, right? We're going to deliver you this bit of value, this bit of value, this bit of value, and this bit of value, okay? Traditional ways of working build things I call known knowns, okay? Who knows of Donald Rumsfeld? You know the name? Got a couple of hands at the back. Okay, Donald Rumsfeld was the U.S. Secretary of State for the United States of America back when good old George Bush was in power, okay? I'm sorry if there's any Americans in here, because we love George Bush. And Donald Rumsfeld was in a press conference. and somebody asked him about things that may or may not have happened. And he said this great quote, and you can go look up the official version, but he said something like, things that may or may not have happened interest me, because there are things we know, there are things we know we don't know, and there are things we don't know, okay? Just basically says, we know some stuff, we know we don't know some stuff, and we don't know some stuff, okay? And then when you put that in the context of all our worlds in terms of software development, it suddenly makes sense, okay? You get given a requirement from a customer, you may know about it. You may have that known, okay? You may have a known unknown about it. You may think you know what it is that needs to be solved, okay? But you don't know how to solve it. And then there are those lovely things that come completely out of the blue that you have no idea were even embedded in the mindset of the customer when they asked for it. And those are your unknown unknowns. So when we talk about requirements and our delivery and the sales guy making that promise, so that 100%, we kind of think back a couple of slides, right? Sales guy said, we're going to give you everything. Okay? We're going to give you everything you want. Okay? Customer is working in a known situation. I think they know everything about everything. I'm trying not to confuse myself, because you end up in this horrible zone where it's what you this is where I do confuse myself. It's what you know versus how much you can deliver upon. Okay, and this is where it kind of. By the way, this talk gets much funnier in a minute. But you end up in this world of expectation where you can't deliver what it is the customer is expecting of you, okay? Because you are still finding out all these known unknowns and these unknowns, these bugs, these changes, this all the stuff that the sales guy might have had an idea about, but hasn't actually told the development team, okay? And just to confuse you further, there's a brilliant line at the bottom that I wrote, which says, "How much do we know we know?" Okay, let's not go into that. So this is the expectation gap versus the commitment. So you make a commitment. You say, somebody said, when are you going to deliver me that 100%? And you say, next week. Okay, you're immediately in that commitment zone. Okay, if you can meet that commitment, your exposure is good. Okay, if you can't meet that commitment, your exposure is bad. Okay, and typically when you're working with upfront contracts which are signed with a fixed date, fixed scope, fixed cost, your exposure is more likely to be negative than it is going to be positive. The iron triangle, it's called the iron triangle. I call it the iron triangle of doom, okay? Because what it typically has is time, cost, scope. And I found this one, I really like this one. It says you can only have two of those states. You can only have it fast and cheap and good, or fast and good. But you can only ever have two. Okay? Any change from this, any deviation, any impact where you try and enforce all three, you're going to impact your quality. Okay? And quality really plays hard when you come into contracts and negotiations and promises and commitments and all these kind of things. So, first lesson, okay? One does not simply become agile. Hands up, who knows Lord of the Rings? Right, keep your hand up. Those who know Lord of the Rings, keep your hand up. Okay, hands up if you know Game of Thrones. Okay, which one is this? So both is Lord of the Rings. Yes, although Sean Bean looks exactly the same in both. I don't know. You're going to have to watch the show, those who don't know. Okay. So, what have we covered so far? We've covered kind of commitments and salespeople and the iron triangle of doom, right? This upfront commitment. And the company I worked for at the time was very much in that zone. They had this upfront commitment with every customer, yet they still expected to manage change and be agile, okay? How can they do that? So we're going to go into roles now, okay? This company had, project managers. Any project managers? Okay, this is usually when I get punched by the project managers, like project managers. So if you Google project manager, this image comes up, it's great. And I wanted to present something kind of half amusing about the roles, but these are serious, right? These are serious roles that happen, okay? So project managers, program managers, program managers only care about the deadlines, right? They only care about the when, okay? Architects, okay? Enterprise organizations, actually most organizations have architects, defined roles, okay? And product people. We have product people who sit there endlessly coming up with ideas, right? And we've tried nothing and we're all out of these ideas. There is a story I could tell you about this, but I'd probably get sued if I did. But this actually happened in real life, okay? So this is the point where I can say I can out-architect anybody in the room, okay, for a number of architect roles within an organization. This is an actual picture I drew of an organization I was working in, okay, where you had your typical Scrum team in the box, okay. And when we talk about teams, and those who turned up earlier, I was kind of saying, Scrum just has this defined. It doesn't tell you how to use it and who should actually be within the team. I don't know whether we've got enough time for me to go into that. Maybe I will later. But that's what Scrum says. Scrum says you have a product owner, Scrum master, and this concept of a team. It's usually developers and testers. Okay? What this organization had around that team, okay, were source control managers. Okay, the guys looking after source control, whatever they do. And then at the top, okay, so every time the team tried to achieve something, right, they would get hit one way or another by this lot of people, right? They had program managers, project managers, technical project managers, technical program managers, business program managers, okay? Enterprise architects, solution architects, data architects, technical architects, product architects. Somebody said to me, what about security architects? I said, yes, they had security architects as well, infrastructure architects, you name it, right? So a developer who's trying to make a change in a line of code has to go and consult with pretty much everybody above them, okay? Now, you put that in the context of Scrum, which is 30 days or less, or typically 2 weeks, right? How are they meant to affect change within 2 weeks? When every time they want to make a change, the people who they have to consult with are outside their realm. They're outside their box. And this is something I presented to the organization that they did very little with, which is a real shame. But that's a real life example, okay? I think later on I say don't do this, but really just don't do this, okay? This is bad. So you end up in a state where, when you want to try Scrum, okay, but you're actually still working in a waterfall way because you've got a fixed time, you've got a fixed scope, but you've somehow thrown Scrum into the middle as if it's going to make a difference, okay? So you end up in Water-Scrum-Fall, okay? Has anybody, does this, do people recognize there's a few nodding heads, right? And this is a typical way of working when people try and be agile. They throw Scrum in the middle into the development period. Now, what I want to really make clear out of this room is that's not such a bad thing, although I'm kind of saying it's really bad, right? It is really bad, okay? But it's only bad if you don't do anything with it, okay? If you just basically think Scrum's going to solve all your problems in the middle of your life cycle, it's not, okay? If you look at Scrum as an enabler to your journey, to your agile journey, then that's where it gets good. Okay? And that's the key difference. Listening, learning, adapting, changing, okay? Listening to all the things that Scrum's throwing up is where you're going to get better, okay? If you just think throwing Scrum in the middle is going to help you, it will help you see what's going wrong and all the bad things around you, but it's not going to make much difference when you're still in that fixed iron triangle, okay? So what we ended up doing, we're back in the lessons, right? So again, another lesson, right? One does not simply become agile because you have managers, you have all these people who kind of kill your team. You have the process, throwing Scrum in the middle. You have the sales guys in the iron triangle of doom and all this stuff, right? There may have been stories today about agile transformations and we always hear about kind of how good certain organizations are around agile transformation, all this stuff. And I really want to stress, when I went through an agile transformation in Nokia back in 2007, 8, 9, whatever it was, it took us 2 years to get to a state where we were actually kind of quite happy and comfortable and running. It's not easy, okay? So the Agile Manifesto, okay, so it wouldn't be an Agile conference without talking about the Agile Manifesto. Actually, how long have I got here? What am I talking up to? Oh, I've got a little bit of time. Okay, so it wouldn't be an Agile conference without the Agile Manifesto, but I'm not going to talk about the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto, okay? But what I want to talk about is the Agile Interpretation. What people think Agile is, okay? And what I think Agile is vegetarian ham, which is chicken flavor, okay? For those who can't read at the back. There is, if you Google this, apparently this is actually real. And they have different flavors as well. There's a bacon flavor or something as well. The reason why I show you this, not only because it's slightly funny, well, it is quite very funny, right? But for me, it tells you something, okay? But it doesn't tell you why you would want to eat this, okay? It doesn't tell you how to eat it, how to cook it, okay? It just tells you what it is. You look at the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles, they kind of do the same thing, right? They tell you some stuff. They tell you do some really good stuff, and things might be better. Okay? It shouldn't be taken as these are absolute rules and things to follow. You know, it shouldn't tell you that every time you go and eat, you now should eat vegetarian ham that's chicken flavor. Okay? Because we just don't know what to do with this. Okay? And this is the misconception around Agile. People kind of use the Agile Manifesto and the principles as a thing to go and do something with. Okay? It's more important to look at the frameworks and the behaviors and the principles as an encompassing set. Okay? So to put it in I don't know whether this next one is better, to put it in a slightly different way, okay, my take on the Agile Manifesto is the Pirates Code, okay, Pirates of the Caribbean. Somebody must have seen Pirates of the Caribbean, right? So there's the bit in Pirates of the Caribbean where Elizabeth Swann has just been captured, right? Right at the start of the film, she's got the necklace. And Captain Bobo's and the Black Pearl sail into Port Royal, I think it is. And she gets captured, brought on board. And she starts negotiating for the safety of Port Royal. And he goes, yes, give me the coin and we'll leave, and leave Port Royal alone. And she goes, brilliant. And then they start sailing off. She goes, but what about me? Now, I come from Bristol, okay, in the UK, in England, okay. Bristol is apparently, well, actually it is. So Edward Teach, who was Blackbeard the pirate, okay, comes from Bristol. So if anybody in the room should be able to do a really good pirate accent, I should be the guy. However, I can't for the life of me, but I'm going to do it anyway, okay? So she's negotiated for Port Royal but forgotten about herself, okay? And she says, but what about me? And she says, what about the Pirates Code? And he goes, they be like guidelines more than rules or whatever, right? They're more like guidelines than rules, okay? And if you start thinking about the Agile Manifesto more like guidelines than hard and fast rules, then it changes. It changes the perspective, okay? Start looking and embracing the principles. When I talked earlier around the 4 principles I pulled out for teams, okay? Working together, it's collaboration, it's communication. That's all the Agile Manifesto is trying to tell us, is do more together, less separation, okay? So when we look at things like Scrum, minions, right? When we look at things like Scrum gives us this picture. Okay, Scrum says Scrum Master, Product Owner, Development Team. It doesn't tell us what that team should be. Now, I get people saying, well, should architects be in there? Should project managers be in there? The answer I always give whenever anybody says who should be in there, and I always fall back on the Scrum Guide, which basically says something along the lines of the development team is comprised of people who, It's something like, it's comprised of people who affect the delivery of the product, right? So for me, that means anybody who has a significant stake in the outcome, the delivery, the coding. Maybe it's an architect who has to work with the team throughout the sprint to build the design. That to me says they should be in the development team. Okay? If you're just an output, if you're just a consumer of the output, then you shouldn't be in there. So when I presented the picture earlier, no, it's not on that one. I thought I had it on the next slide. When I presented the picture earlier around like my box with the people affecting it, I could actually argue some of them might need to be in the development team, And actually, I would even say some of them need to be inside the box, okay? Because they should be talking to that Scrum team every day, not waiting for the Scrum team to go to them, okay? Those who go to, who've done Agile Scrum Master training, I don't know whether you've played the Go game, but the Go game is all built around changing the mindset of pointing at somebody and saying, you do this. It's the mindset change of pointing at somebody and they then ask you to go. So they're asking you for help, not you're telling them what to do. And so this is where Scrum teams and the behavior teams need to change, and the supporting people around Agile and Scrum teams need to change. Okay, so I've got a little bit of time, I think. I have no idea what the time is. Oh no, we're good. So what happened? So everything I've told you up to now is stuff I learned, right? Stuff I didn't know. I'd been a Scrum Master for what, 4 or 5 years, right? I'd never really looked outside my box. I'd never really looked outside my team and how the organization works and really what affects it. Okay, so what happened when I got my team? Well, I did. I went and hired. I went and bought some Scrum Masters. Well, effectively, I did. But I went and hired some Scrum Masters. My favorite one here is like what Ken Schwaber thinks I do. Follow me. But yes, I got to hire Scrum Masters. I ended up with 9 Scrum Masters on my team. Okay. But what happened next is when we started in a Water-Scrum-Fall mode. Okay. We found this, okay, the picture I presented earlier, we found this as the working model, okay, and it sucked. It was horrible, okay. We couldn't do anything. We were effectively, oh yeah, sorry, I thought it was a slide ahead. We were effectively stuck, okay. The other behavior we managed to somehow stir up, okay, with the project managers, okay? Brace yourself, project manager roles are coming. We had a whole load of project managers who suddenly felt threatened because what we were doing, we were exposing all the inefficiencies of their role, okay? We were exposing the planning they weren't doing and the reports they were making up. I can say that now, I don't work there anymore. Come to the dark side. We have Gantt charts. Yes. So we ended up working like this, right? And the project managers literally turned on the Scrum Masters and the Scrum teams, and started forcing the Scrum Masters to plan way up in the future when there was still huge product uncertainty. People take photos if you want. If you want these afterwards, I'll give you the pictures, or you can just Google them. These are all Googled. Because what we ended up was Gantt charts, we had project managers revolting, we had this horrible behavior of estimates being treated as deadlines, okay? And all the while, the team was spinning in the middle, okay? You imagine that poor development team with all these influences and these people going when, right? And we were working like this, okay? And what we ended up is actually, I don't know whether you can see it very well, it's Water-Scrum-Fail. Okay, I don't know whether the next slide, there used to be a slide where I sat down with a really good friend of mine and I was talking him through this, and we ended up concluding it was fail, 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 because we couldn't do anything. Okay, the management didn't support the Scrum teams and the initiative enough to force back the project managers to have that difficult conversation and say, look, you've got to give these guys some breathing room, okay? But also there were higher level management misbehaviors where they didn't really understand what was going on at the ground level. So they were forcing the behavior with the project and program managers to ask for the Gantt charts, to put pressure on the development teams to deliver. But the development teams had no idea. They had no idea what they were meant to deliver. They had a small amount of known knowns, but their effective backlog was full of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. There was very little in the way of product clarity. So, I've talked at you for, I don't know, however long, probably half an hour or so, okay? I want to get to what does this all mean, Andy? What are you telling us? No one understands complexity or inefficiency until they get involved. This was something a friend of mine at the time said to me. Okay, and I really like that quote because it told me everything of my journey, okay? All this stuff I really didn't know or didn't expect to experience, or all these things and behaviors that people started acting, right? Until we started trying, okay? until we started getting involved. So that's kind of a lesson to take away, right? And it's not a lesson to stop you doing things. It's a lesson that you'll only know whether it's going to be the right or wrong thing when you do it, okay? And the less you do, you'll never find out, okay? So, pump pink fluffy unicorns dancing in rainbows. I have no idea what this slide is about. And last time I presented this, I'm pretty sure I said the same thing. I have no idea what this slide is about. It used to be about something. I don't know. It's just a nice slide, right? So, don't do this, okay? Really, really obvious lessons out of this room. Don't do this. Don't do that, okay? If you're starting to see your organization change like this, seek, sounds really bad, it's like the AA, seek help, okay? But you need somebody to help you get you out of this state, okay? You know, you need some support to help you push forward, okay? Don't stick with these kind of models. You know, otherwise you'll end up in Water-Scrum-Fail. So do this instead, okay? Ask why. Okay, and that goes a long way, okay? Why are we actually bothering to try Agile? Why are we actually bothering to try Scrum? What is it that we're trying to get out of this change? And it was something I naively didn't ever get an answer to, okay? I would have waited to hire my Scrum Masters if I had a really good answer to this question from the top level execs. But there was more going on that I can say in this room and knew at the time. Okay, what you should do is go and get that senior support to give you the answer to why. Okay, metrics, measure your organization. Right, these guys. So if you're talking about C-level execs, right, will have targets. Hopefully, right, they'll hopefully be trying to look at the efficiency and the value and all the feedback that they're getting to the customers. So leverage them. Right, they're your ultimate stakeholder. Okay, if you're trying to put Scrum in, right, go and talk to them about it, okay, and say, well, what is it you think you want to get out of this, right? Bring them along, get them involved in the stand-ups, get them involved in the outputs, the demos, the reviews. Bring them along to a retrospective, but you need to include these people, okay, for this stuff to be successful. Yes, and I know it's Mr. Burns, an old guy for senior, I don't know. Let it flow, okay. So this goes into the measuring your organizational efficiency, okay? So once you know why, and you've got that senior support, okay, start measuring, okay? We started measuring and found out it was something like 3 or 4 weeks, right, between an idea and it being delivered into a developer's computer. Wasn't even on a server, wasn't even on production, wasn't even in staging or whatever, right? And that was just literally to get an idea through the development team, through all the ceremonies, right? And if we couldn't produce a valuable output in 4 weeks, right, with the support we didn't have, we were doomed. Okay? So look at the way your organization flows, okay? Look at the way your development flows. Look at automated testing, look at automated delivery. Measure, time your flow, right? And start using that against the metrics you have from your senior stakeholders. And even if it's really bad, just present it to them and say, did you know, when somebody asks for something, it takes us, 3 months to get it out the door. And I would be shocked if they weren't shocked, So look at the rules, limits, and constraints. It's something I kind of talked a little bit about earlier, but it's breaking the rules, okay? Breaking the limits and constraints where you can, okay? Every organization, and people talk about having particular organizations where you need sign-off, government departments, all these kind of things. Sure, there are always limits and constraints, but try and work within them, okay? Try and break the behavior. Try and understand how it works, Can you work around it, right? Reduce your release cycle and commitment? Yeah, sure, When I talked about commitment earlier, this need to deliver everything that you know, or you think you know, or you absolutely don't know, okay? There is a danger with this behavior, okay? So people will say, right, we need to go faster, okay? But again, understanding the exposure of the reduction in your release cycle, so you're measuring. So once you understand your release cycle, how long does it take, right? Can we reduce that down? What are the things we need to do to reduce that, okay? But it will come at a cost, okay? It will cost you, okay? And it will lead to some exposure, okay, good or bad. But that's going to be up to you and your organization. Oh, that's bad, isn't it? That looks awful. Look at the cadence, so rhythm, heartbeat of the organization, okay? So Scrum in itself has its own heartbeat, these particular feedback loops, okay? And optimize. When I mean optimize, I mean try and shout about them, okay? So if you've got stand-ups, if you've got retrospectives, if you've got demos, you've got to shout about them. Get people involved, okay? Make sure these are understood and regular, okay? They can't be irregular, because the moment this slips into an irregular heartbeat, if you had an irregular heartbeat, you go and see the doctor, right? You go and seek some help. And we should do that with our organizations. We should be delivering feedback to ourselves and our customers regularly, okay? And that's it. Nice picture of Austin Powers, for no other reason than I thought it would be a little bit less depressing and a little bit cheery. So I think that's the end of Water-Scrum-Fall. So I hope that's been interesting, and thank you very much. Where's my drink? Questions while I get a drink? Any questions? Any questions at all? Or do you all just want to go home? Fair enough. That's it then. Thank you.